Attica was a woman who had seen pain from the moment she was born. Her father had abandoned her mother when she was just a baby, leaving her mother, Chinello, to raise her alone. Growing up without a father, Attica faced the harsh words of people who called her the daughter of a single woman. Despite all this, her mother raised her to be strong, telling her that God never forgets his children. Attica believed her mother's words. She worked hard, graduated from school, and got a job. When she met Chidi, she thought God had finally answered her prayers. Chidi was handsome, educated, and came from a wealthy family. When he proposed, Attica thought her life was complete. But she was wrong. From the first day Chidi brought Attica to his family, his mother, Mama Chidi, did not welcome her. Mama Chidi looked at her with disgust, saying, "Why would you bring a woman from a broken home to be your wife? She will only bring you bad luck." Chidi ignored his mother's words, promising Attica that they would build a happy home together. But things changed after their wedding. 2 years into their marriage, Attica still hadn't conceived a child. It was as though her womb had turned to stone. Every day, her mother-in-law reminded her that she was useless. "You are nothing but a man in a woman's body," Mama Chidi said one morning when Attica was cooking in the kitchen. "Why can't you give my son a child? Are you not a woman? Or are you a spirit?" Attica swallowed her tears, refusing to cry. Her mother had taught her to be strong, but inside, her heart was breaking. Chidi, the man she loved, had also changed. He was no longer the caring man she married. Instead, he blamed her for their childlessness. One evening, after Chidi came back from work, Attica tried to serve him food, but he pushed the plate aside. "Why do you keep pretending like everything is okay?" he asked coldly. "What kind of woman are you? You can't even give me a child. What am I doing with you?" Attica fell to her knees. "Chidi, please don't speak like that. I am praying. God will give us a child." Chidi scoffed. "Which God?" "The God of barren women." Attica held her tears. She refused to let him see her cry. After he left the room, she went to her closet, knelt down, and cried to God. "God, please do not let my enemies laugh at me. Please remember me." But things only got worse. Attica returned home one evening from the market, carrying a heavy bag of groceries. As she walked into the house, she noticed something strange. The door to their bedroom was slightly open, and faint whispers came from inside. Her heart sank. She moved quietly, hoping it was her mind playing tricks on her. But as she got closer, she heard laughter, a woman's laughter. Attica froze. Her hands shook as she pushed the door open, and what she saw made her knees go weak. There, on their bed, was her husband, Chidi, lying with another woman. They didn't even flinch. Chidi looked at her with no guilt, no shame. Instead, he smirked. "Oh, you're back," he said casually, as if he had done nothing wrong. Attica couldn't believe her ears. "Chidi, what is this? How could you do this to me?" The woman beside Chidi, a light-skinned woman with long braids, wrapped the bedsheet around herself and laughed. "Why are you acting surprised? Do you think you are the only woman in his life?" Attica's lips trembled. "Chidi, you promised me. You said you loved me." Chidi stood up from the bed and adjusted his shirt. "Love," he scoffed. "Love doesn't give me a child. I'm a man, Attica. I need a child, and you've failed me." Attica's heart shattered. "Is that why you did this? Is that why you brought another woman into our home?" Chidi shrugged. "I needed to try my luck. You've had years to give me a child, and you failed." The other woman stood up, smirking. "This is our husband's house now. You better get used to it." Attica's eyes widened. "Our husband?" "Yes," the woman sneered. "Chidi is my man too. And unlike you, I will give him children." Attica felt like the walls were closing in on her. She ran to her closet, the one place where she felt safe, and collapsed on the floor. Tears poured down her face as she cried out to God. "Why me, God? What did I do wrong? Why is this happening to me?" The next morning, Attica tried to gather herself, but her heart was still heavy. She was in the kitchen when Mama Chidi walked in. Mama Chidi didn't greet her. Instead, she crossed her arms and said, "Have you seen your replacement now? I told my son not to marry you, but he didn't listen." Attica clenched her fists, holding back her tears. "You are just like your mother," Mama Chidi continued. "A woman who couldn't keep her husband. What kind of daughter did you expect to raise? Useless, just like her." Attica turned to face her mother-in-law. "Mama, please, I've done nothing to deserve this." Mama Chidi laughed bitterly. "You've done nothing? You've given my son no children. What are you still doing here? Leave this house, so my son can marry a real woman." Attica shook her head. "I won't leave. I'm still his wife. Mama Chidi stepped closer, her voice venomous. For now. But mark my words, you will leave. You don't belong here. Attica's heart bled with pain, but she stood firm. I made vows before God. I will not leave my husband. Mama Chidi's eyes narrowed. We'll see how long you last. Attica lay in her bed that night, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, but her mind wasn't. The echoes of her husband's betrayal and her mother-in-law's insults wouldn't leave her head. Her husband, Chidi, was with the other woman, the woman who now called herself our husband's wife. Attica turned her face to the wall, tears rolling down her cheeks. She whispered to herself, "Is this my life? Is this the home I prayed for?" Her heart broke into pieces, but she refused to let the pain crush her. She slipped quietly out of bed, walked to her closet, and knelt down. God, I don't have anyone else but you. Please fight for me. Wipe away my tears. As she cried, memories from her childhood flooded her mind. Attica was just 5 years old when her father left. She remembered the day clearly. It was raining heavily, and her mother, Chinello, was holding her tightly under a tree, trying to shield her from the rain. Her father stood across from them with his bags packed. Chinello, I'm done. I'm leaving. I can't stay in this house anymore. Chinello fell to her knees, holding Attica with one hand and begging her husband with the other. Please, Obinna, don't leave us. We need you. Obinna shook his head. I can't stay. You have nothing to offer me. I need a woman who will bring me wealth. Attica, too young to fully understand what was happening, tugged at her father's shirt. Papa, where are you going? Don't leave me. But Obinna didn't even look at her. He walked away, leaving Chinello and Attica in the rain. From that day, Chinello became both mother and father to Attica. She worked on people's farms, sold firewood, and did whatever she could to keep them fed. But life in the village wasn't kind to a single mother. People whispered whenever they saw them. Chinello's daughter will be just like her, abandoned by a man. Those words haunted Attica. She worked hard in school, determined to prove everyone wrong. Her mother always encouraged her. Attica, your name means daughter of wealth. One day, God will bless you. But now, sitting in her closet and crying, Attica wondered if her mother's words were true. Where is my blessing, God? Where is the wealth in my name? The next morning, Attica walked into the living room and saw the other woman sitting comfortably on the couch, drinking tea. She acted like the house was hers. Good morning, Attica said quietly, trying to stay calm. The woman laughed. Good morning. Why are you pretending to be polite? I'm not going anywhere. This is my house too. Attica clenched her fists. This is my home. I am Chidi's wife. The woman stood up and walked toward Attica. And who told you that matters? Chidi doesn't love you anymore. He needs a real woman, one who can give him children. Attica's chest heaved with anger, but she held her peace. She remembered her mother's advice. Silence speaks louder than words. But the woman wasn't done. Listen, Attica, you are wasting your time. Chidi will soon send you out of this house. He already told me that his mother is looking for a new bride for him. Attica's heart sank. A new bride? Yes, the woman said with a smirk. You failed as a wife. It's only a matter of time before you're replaced. Later that day, Mama Chidi arrived at the house with a smug look on her face. She didn't greet Attica as usual. Instead, she sat down and called Chidi into the living room. Chidi, it's time we settle this matter once and for all, Mama Chidi said. This woman has failed you. You need a new wife. Attica stood in the corner, listening to every word, her heart breaking. Mama, please, she said, stepping forward. I am still Chidi's wife. I haven't done anything wrong. Mama Chidi turned to her with cold eyes. Wrong? You haven't done anything right either. No child, no happiness. What are you still doing here? Attica turned to Chidi, hoping he would defend her. But he didn't. He simply shrugged and said, Mama is right. I need a child. Attica felt like the ground was swallowing her whole. So you're sending me away? Chidi sighed. If you can't give me a child, what's the point? Attica couldn't hold back her tears. She ran back to her closet, slammed the door shut, and cried out to God. God, are you listening? Please fight for me. Don't let my enemies win. Days turned into weeks, and the situation grew worse. The other woman moved into the house permanently. She mocked Attica every chance she got, calling her barren and useless. Mama Chidi encouraged her son to file for divorce. But Attica refused to give up. She clung to her faith, praying day and night for a miracle. One night, As she knelt in her closet, something shifted in her spirit. She wiped her tears and stood up, looking at herself in the mirror. No more tears, she whispered. No more begging. The next morning, she walked into the living room with a calm but determined look. The other woman and Mama Chidi were there, laughing over breakfast. Good morning, Attica said. They both looked at her, surprised by her calm demeanor. Why are you smiling? The other woman asked. Have you finally accepted your fate? Attica stepped closer. No, I have accepted that God is my only defender. You may think you've won, but this is still my home. Mama Chidi sniad. And what will you do? Attica looked her mother-in-law straight in the eye. I will do nothing. God will fight my battle. Chidi paced around his office, restless. His mind kept wandering back to Attica's words that morning. God will fight my battle. There was something in her voice, something unshakable. Despite everything he had done to her, she still stood strong. For a moment, guilt tugged at his chest, but he quickly pushed it aside. He picked up his phone and dialed Uju's number. Hello, darling. Uju answered sweetly. I'm coming home early, Chidi said, his voice flat. Uju giggled. That's good. I'll cook something special for you. Chidi hung up without another word. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He wanted peace, but his life had become a storm. When Chidi arrived home, he walked into the living room to find Uju sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled. Welcome, my love. Chidi nodded, sitting down without looking at her. His silence didn't go unnoticed. Uju moved closer, resting her hand on his shoulder. Are you okay? Chidi sighed. I'm fine, but Uju wasn't convinced. She tilted her head, studying him. You've been distant lately. Is something bothering you? Chidi glanced at her, his expression unreadable. I'm just tired. Tired of what? Uju pressed. Chidi stood up abruptly, walking toward the window. He stared outside, his thoughts swirling. I don't know, Uju. Maybe I'm tired of everything. Uju frowned. What do you mean? Chidi turned to face her, his eyes filled with conflict. Do you ever wonder if we made a mistake? Uju's heart skipped a beat. A mistake? Are you saying you regret being with me? Chidi rubbed his forehead. I don't know. Sometimes, I feel like my life is falling apart. Uju's voice rose. Your life is falling apart? What about me? I gave up everything to be with you, Chidi. My family, my job, my friends. I left everything behind because you promised me a future. Chidi's gaze hardened. And now you want me to promise you peace? Uju's eyes filled with tears. All I ever wanted was for you to love me. Chidi's voice softened. I thought I loved you. But now, I don't know what love is anymore. Uju stood there, trembling with anger and pain. So, you're saying you still love Attica? Chidi's silence was answer enough. Uju let out a bitter laugh. You're unbelievable, Chidi. You betrayed her. You brought me into this house. And now you want to run back to her. Chidi looked away. She never gave up on me. Even after everything, she's still standing. Uju shook her head. She's only standing because she's waiting for your downfall. Chidi turned to face her, his voice firm. No. She's standing because she has faith, something you wouldn't understand. Uju sat on the edge of the bed, tapping her fingers nervously on her lap. Chidi hadn't spoken to her all night, and the silence was deafening. She could feel him pulling away, and the fear that had been building in her chest was now unbearable. She got up, paced the room, and glanced at the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman desperate to hold on to something slipping through her fingers. I can't lose him, Uju whispered to herself. I've come too far to lose now. Her thoughts wandered back to Attica, and rage bubbled inside her. Why won't that woman just leave? Why is she still here, clinging to a man who doesn't want her? Uju stormed out of the room and found Chidi sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. Chidi, she called softly. He barely looked at her. What is it? Uju sat beside him, forcing a smile. I've been thinking, maybe we should take a trip. Just the two of us. We need time to ourselves. Chidi shook his head. I don't have time for that. Uju's smile faltered. But it will be good for us. You've been distant lately. Don't you want to fix things? Chidi sighed heavily. I'm not sure there's anything to fix, Uju. Uju's heart sank. What are you saying? Chidi finally looked at her, his eyes tired and distant. I'm saying maybe we rushed into this. Maybe. I made a mistake. Uju stood up abruptly, her chest heaving. A mistake? Is that what I am to you? A mistake? Chidi didn't respond. Uju's voice trembled with emotion. I left my life behind for you, Chidi. My family disowned me. My friends warned me, but I didn't listen. I believed in you. I believed in us. Chidi rubbed his temples, his patience wearing thin. Uju, please. I'm tired. No, Uju snapped. You don't get to walk away from me like this. You promised me a future, Chidi. Chidi stood up, his voice calm but firm. I promised you many things. But I can't promise you peace if I don't even have peace in my heart. Uju's eyes filled with tears. So what now? You're going back to her? To Ataku? Chidi didn't answer. His silence pierced Uju's heart like a knife. She clenched her fists, her mind racing with thoughts of how to hold on to him. I can't lose him to that barren woman. I won't. Later that night, Uju called Mama Chidi. Mama, things are getting worse, Uju whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. Chidi is starting to regret being with me. Mama Chidi clicked her tongue. Nonsense. My son knows what's best for him. You're just being paranoid. I'm not being paranoid. Uju snapped. He's talking about Ataku. He said she's still standing strong, and he admires her faith. Mama Chidi sighed. Listen to me, Uju. You've come too far to back down now. You need to stand your ground. That woman has no place in this house. But what if he leaves me, Mama? Uju's voice broke. I can't go back to my family. They'll laugh at me. Mama Chidi's tone hardened. Then don't let him leave. Do whatever you need to do to keep him. Uju wiped her tears. I will. Attica woke up before dawn, the house still and quiet. She had barely slept, but her mind was clear. After everything she had endured, the humiliation, the betrayal, the pain, she realized it was time to walk away. There was no need for a dramatic goodbye. No need to plead with a man who had stopped fighting for her. She packed a small bag with her clothes, her Bible, and a few personal items, then knelt by her bed. God, thank you for the strength to endure. As I leave this house, please go with me. Guide my steps and bless the path I take. And Lord bless Chidi, even though he hurt me. Let him find peace. With that, Attica stood up, wiped her tears, and quietly left the house she once called home. She didn't leave a note. She didn't look back. Chidi woke up later that morning. He immediately sensed something was wrong. The house felt empty. Ataku, he called out, but there was no answer. He searched every room, checked the closet, and even the backyard, but she was nowhere to be found. Panic gripped him as he realized she had left. Where did she go? He muttered, running his hands through his hair. Mama Chidi and Uju entered the living room, both looking unconcerned. She's gone, Mama Chidi asked with a smirk. Good. That barren woman had no place here. But Chidi didn't share his mother's joy. Instead, anger bubbled inside him. You're happy, Chidi snapped. You think this is a victory? Mama Chidi shrugged. She was useless to you, Chidi. Now you can build a real family with Uju. Chidi's jaw clenched. A real family? You think a family is built on lies and betrayal? He stormed out of the house, determined to find Ataku. He searched the village, went to her friends' houses, and even traveled to her mother's home. But no one had seen her. For weeks he searched, hoping to find her and make things right. But Ataku had disappeared, leaving no trace behind. Far from the village, Attica sat in a small rented room, her hands resting on her growing belly. The doctor's words echoed in her mind. Congratulations, Mrs. Chidi. You're pregnant. Tears welled up in her eyes, a mixture of joy and sorrow. God didn't forget me. He answered my prayers. But as she looked at her reflection in the mirror, she made a decision. I will raise this child on my own, she whispered. I won't go back to Chidi. He made his choice, and I won't let him hurt me or my child. For the first time in months, Attica smiled. She found a job at a small shop and started to rebuild her life, focusing on the child growing inside her. Back in the village, Chidi's life began to crumble. Despite Uju's efforts to make him happy, Chidi grew more distant by the day. He barely spoke to her, avoided her touch, and spent most of his time alone, lost in thought. One evening, Uju confronted him. Chidi, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? Chidi looked at her, his eyes filled with regret. What's wrong with me? I lost the only woman who truly loved me. That's what's wrong. Uju's face hardened. You still love her? Yes, Chidi said without hesitation. And I always will. Uju's voice trembled with anger. But I'm the one here. I'm the one who left everything for you. Chidi shook his head. You were never meant to be here, Uju. I made a mistake. And now, I have to live with it. As time passed, Chidi began to notice something troubling. Uju wasn't getting pregnant. Month after month, they tried to conceive, but nothing happened. One evening, Chidi sat across from Mama Chidi, his expression cold. Mama, I have something to say. Mama Chidi smiled. What is it, my son? Chidi's voice was calm, but his words cut deep. You ruined me. Mama Chidi blinked in shock. Chidi, what are you saying? I had a good wife. A faithful woman who loved me and stood by me. But you poisoned my mind against her. You and Uju destroyed my home. Mama Chidi's voice trembled. Chidi, I did what I thought was best for you. No, Mama, Chidi said, standing up. You did what was best for yourself. And now look at me. I have no wife. No child. Nothing. Mama Chidi tried to reach for his hand, but he pulled away. I want you out of my house. What? Mama Chidi gasped. You heard me, Chidi said firmly. Leave. I don't want you here anymore. After sending his mother away, Chidi turned to Uju. I want you to leave too. Uju's eyes widened in disbelief. You're throwing me out? Yes, Chidi said coldly. There's nothing left for us here. I made a mistake, and it's time I start fixing it. Uju fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Chidi, please. I love you. Chidi shook his head. Love isn't enough, Uju. You helped destroy my life. Now I need to find my peace. Months later, Attica gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Chukwubuka, meaning God is great. As she held her son in her arms, she whispered, Your father may never know you, but you will know love. I promise to raise you with all the love I have. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. She had found strength in her pain and joy in her child. And as for Chidi, he spent the rest of his life searching for peace. A peace he never found. Because some mistakes can never be undone.